Hey, welcome back. My name's Justin, and this is an episode of Edrum News, where I keep you guys up to date on everything happening with the new electronic drum sets releasing. Roland has 6 brand new drum sets, and Alesis even has something interesting. They have a kit under $1,000 with a movable hi-hat now. But today's video's majority is going to be covering these 6 drum sets: the TD313, TD316, VAD316, TD513, the TD516, and the VAD516. The really important thing is that these new modules, the V31 and the V51, they are fundamentally changing a long-term strategy Roland has had in the past. They used to come out with like a really high-end flagship module, and they would have every feature, every sound under the sun. And then they would come out with cheaper modules that would like dumb down like the features. And then by the time you got down to like the equivalent of the TD17 or the TD11 back in the day, it would be a much more limited module than the flagship when it comes to editing and sound quality and sound count, that kind of stuff. They have done away with this strategy. They are now taking the flagship sound engine of their $2,900 module and putting it all the way down, not just in their successor to the TD27, but also their successor to the TD17. By the way, I've actually got 2 of these drum sets behind me. They're on loan from Roland, so full reviews are going to be coming out for the TD316 and the TD516. If they're live, I'll link them in the description below. And if you're watching this like the moment I drop the video, just know they're coming out very soon. These videos are on the way. But first, today's video is brought to you by Edrum Center. If you're shopping for an electronic drum set from Roland, Alesis, Yamaha, F-Note, any of the important brands, they've got you covered. They even sell individual parts like cymbals, stands, modules, even little replacement parts like if you need a control dial on a Roland module or something, they've got you covered. I've got a site-wide discount link to them in the description below. Use that if you want to buy anything and let them know that Justin sent you. It helps support the channel. All right, so let's actually go through the drum sets one by one, starting with the cheapest drum set in what they call their new 3 series. By the way, that's the way Roland is dividing their kits up now. The flagship is the 7 series, the upper mid-range is the 5 series, and the lower mid-range is the 3 series. Okay, so first up is the Roland TD313. By the way, this is the replacement for the Roland TD17 KV2, and it's going to launch at $1,700. The sizes are 10 inches for the dual zone hi-hat, which is mounted on the drum rack. You get a 12-inch dual zone crash cymbal, a 14-inch 3-zone ride with positional sensing. The snare drum is 12 inches across, it's dual zone, and it's the same one that came on the older TD17 line, but now with a different type of rubber rim. Pretty much the same thing though. The toms are 8, 8, and 10 inches across. They're also dual zone, and the kick drum is 5 inches across. The new pads here are the PD8H and the PD10H. Roland finally came to their senses and got rid of those dumb inner plastic rims on the previous toms. I'll have more in-depth thoughts and take these pads apart in my in-depth review. And the really big upgrade is the Roland V31 module. So you're getting every kit from the flagship, I believe you're getting every sound, and most, if not every single editing option that flagship module has. Oddly enough, I actually really like the drum lesson section of this module. Because they have a larger color screen, finally, they can put real drum notation on screen, and as you play the song or the rudiments on screen, it will show you when you're playing ahead, where you're playing behind, and when you're hitting pads that weren't on the drum notation in the first place. Another feature of the V31 module is that it has Roland Cloud integration. So if you want to download extra like DW kits they've recorded and converted to work with Roland modules from the Roland Cloud, you can put those inside of this and expand the sonic capabilities of the module. Not just like with one-shot samples or remixing of kits, but actual all new instruments brought into the module. They come with like 6 months of free Roland Cloud access, last I knew, and then after that you'd have to pay. But I would recommend buying individual kits that you like, and I would just avoid doing the forever monthly fee. The last thing I'll mention about this module, and again, I'm skipping over a ton of stuff, it has a digital pad input on the back for the first time of a module of this price range. Okay, so enough about the module. We'll talk more about that later. What do I think about this first drum set, the TD313? I think this drum set is pretty solid. For $1,700, they're giving you quite a lot. This is the best drum module in class. It also has very decent pads. The only weakness is that you're getting a hi-hat mounted to the drum rack instead of mounted to a movable hi-hat stand. So for that reason, I still wouldn't buy this drum set personally. I would go to the next drum set on the list. But overall, it is a very, very decent drum set. It is. If you're doing like further cross comparison shopping, the two competitors that you need to know about are the Alesis Strata Club and the Yamaha DTX 6K Mesh. So those are the drum sets around $1,700 that you should compare with this drum set when you're shopping. All right, let's move ahead to drum set number 2. So this is the Roland TD316, which I happen to have right here, and I'll have a video on. So this kit is replacing the TD17 KVX2, and it will cost $2,000 at launch. This drum set has a lot of the same components with the previous kit. It's got the same toms, it's got the same crash cymbal, same ride, but there are some legitimate upgrades. So first, you're getting 2 crashes instead of just 1. The hi-hat is now the VH10. It mounts to a hi-hat stand sold separately. So you're getting more realism here. It has a new snare drum pad called the PD12P. This has positional sensing support. It can detect 2 different kinds of rim shots, not just an open rim shot, but a shallow rim shot, and it has brush support. I have some thoughts about all these capabilities in my review, so go watch that. The drum rack got upgraded to the MDS Compact 2. Unlike the previous kit, this one has a wider gap up front, so it's easier to put like a bigger kick drum directly in between those legs right there. And just like the previous kit, this comes with the same V31 module, and you already know what I think about that. This is the best module of its class. This is a very, very solid module, in my opinion. I think this is a very, very competitive drum set. If you have $2,000, it would be hard not to recommend this drum set. It's just very, very competitive. And normally, whatever company has the newest $2,000 drum set, you can usually say that because they have the newest version, and so they're usually just months or a year ahead of everybody else. But I think Roland will be competitive at this price if they hold it at $2,000 with this kit for quite a while. I like this drum set a lot. And if you're doing comparison shopping, the one competitor at $2,000 currently is the Alesis Strata Core, which I have a dedicated video on the channel if you want to go check that out. Okay, so drum set number 3 is the Roland VAD316. This is launching at $3,400, and it replaces the VAD307. Now, because this is the VAD version of the previous kit, it's their acoustic-looking series. At this pricing level, they don't give you the full shells, but at least they give you a little bit of a shell, and this is going to be larger than the previous kit. Here are the sizes. This drum set has a 12-inch snare drum, the toms are 10, 10, and 12 inches across, and the kick drum is 18 inches across. That's the new drum here. So the kit used to have the KD180 LBK, and now they have the KD18 BK. It's the kick drum they put on the TD716, and it has a deeper 18-inch shell. And also it has a larger playing surface for double beaters. The previous one can handle that too, but this just gives you more room, and also room if you want to have the beaters be lower down on the drum. And it also has a wooden protective plate or damping plate, whatever you want to call it, over the front batter head, because this is a pad floating inside of an acoustic drum head. For cymbals, it has a 12-inch hi-hat, the crashes are 12 and 14 inches across, and the ride is 16. Once again, this has the V31 module because this is the last kit in the 3 series of drums from them. So compared to the 307, this does have some good upgrades. The larger kick drum, you get a dedicated stand for the module instead of a clamp to the hi-hat stand. You get a larger ride cymbal, it's 16 inches across this time, and one of the crashes has been upgraded too. And then of course the biggest upgrade is the module because the TD17 is pretty old at this point. Now when we compare this versus the TD316, which is the pad version of this drum set, you do get larger toms, you get a much larger kick drum that feels better than the tiny little 5-inch kick drum, the KD10 on the cheaper drum set. Crash 2 is larger, and you get a bigger 16-inch ride cymbal. And if you prefer individual stands over a drum rack because you can move everything exactly the way you want and it looks, a little different, this has that going for it too. The only downside that I could dig up is that technically the snare drum on the TD version of the kit is a little bit more advanced. But aside from that, I do think this drum set is better. However, you have to decide personally if it's $1,400 better. Okay, so you can sort of weigh the pros and cons depending on the price. I personally do prefer this drum set over the TD version because I like the look and I like the bigger, heavier kick drum. And especially the ride, that's a decent upgrade for me, getting that 16-inch ride. All right, so that completes the 3 series. Now let's talk about the Roland 5 series. The first drum set is the TD513. This is replacing the TD27K. That's a drum set I have never played before because it was a Costco exclusive where I live in the United States. And this new drum set, the TD513, will also be a Costco exclusive, according to a Roland representative that I asked about this. So there's a good chance I'll never be able to make a video about this drum set specifically because I'm not a member of Costco and I'm not going to go through the trouble of requesting a review unit of this drum set. But it's going to cost $2,700, and here's what you need to know about it. It has a 12-inch hi-hat, VH10, 12 and 14-inch crashes, and a 16-inch ride. The drums are the same as the TD316, 12, 8, 8, 10, and 5 inches across. The drum rack is larger than the drum rack on the TD316. It's the MDS Standard 3. The drum module is one we haven't covered yet, which is the V51. What you need to know about this module is that the sounds and the editing are identical to the V31 we already talked about. The differences are going to be the ports, the inputs and the outputs, and the interface. You might find that you want the nicer module because you can plug more stuff into it. It's got like direct outs. The previous module didn't have that. This module has like all 3 digital pad inputs, so you can use all the high-end pads. Faders, which is very, very useful. I like being able to change the ambience instead of like having to press something and then use the wheel to change something. It's just a better module to live with on the day-to-day, and you can expand it a little bit larger than the V31 module because it has more pad inputs, and it has pad inputs for the best pads that Roland has. But here's the thing. It's a good module. It's a fantastic successor to the TD27, but the question is, does this module make sense on this drum set? And I would have to say, not really. So while I'm not saying this drum set is bad, but what I am saying is, I understand why Roland was willing to make this a Costco exclusive in the United States. So now let's talk about drum set number 5. This is the Roland TD516, and it's replacing the TD27 KV2. That drum set was fantastic, so this new one has a lot to live up to. And thankfully, it's also fantastic. It's going to launch at $3,700, and I'll have like full in-depth thoughts in my review, but here are the highlights. It comes with the 2-piece 14-inch digital hi-hats, which have positional sensing, foot pressure detection, and are pretty much the best hi-hats in the industry in my opinion. It's a massive upgrade over the VH10. I was jumping back and forth between the TD316 and the 516, and the difference is just amazing. The ride cymbal is the 18-inch digital ride with positional sensing. The snare is the 14-inch digital one, but to be clear, it's the old digital snare, the PD140DS from 2016. And for the rest of the analog pads, the toms are 10, 10, and 12 inches across for the floor tom. The kick drum has a playing surface that's 7.5 inches across, and the crash cymbals are 14 and 12. Now, my thoughts about the overall kit are, this is a nice upgrade over the TD27 KV2. That drum set was great, and I still recommend it if you can find it on sale and stuff. If the price is right, that's still worth buying and owning and all that stuff. But there are some things that needed to be upgraded. The first and foremost one was the kick drum. The KD10 is a fine pad on cheaper drum sets, but it doesn't make sense on a drum set of this price range. So switching over to the KD12 made the drum set look more complete. It's a heavier kick drum, and it also looks more expensive. They also made the floor tom a little bit larger. It used to be the toms were 10, 10, and 10. Now it's 10, 10, and 12. And then, of course, the module. The V51 module is better than the TD27, so that combined with the kick drum and the larger floor tom and the newer high toms, there's just a lot here that make this drum set technically better than the TD27 KV2. So if you're at this price range, it's an easy buy if you like the way Roland modules sound. The only two things that I can nitpick about with this drum set are, number one, the first crash is 12 inches across. It should be at least a 14-inch in my opinion. And finally, the snare drum is the older digital snare drum. It doesn't have the new snare throw-off. It doesn't perform worse than the new snare drum, but I kind of wish it was the new design. And it's one of those things where they're sort of dangling the new pad if you spend more money and go to the next kit. Taken as a whole though, this drum set is fantastic. I can highly recommend it. All right, so now let's move ahead to the 6th drum set. This is the Roland VAD 516, and it's replacing the VAD 507. It's going to launch at $5,800, and it's the acoustic-looking counterpart to the TD 516, which is why the numbers match. You're getting full-size wooden shells here, so 20 inches for the kick drum, 14 inches for the snare drum, and the toms are 10, 12, and 14 inches across. The cymbals are 14 inches for the digital hi-hats, 14 and 16 for the crashes, and 18 inches for the ride. So what changed from the VAD 507? Well, you're getting the new version of the digital snare drum with a 3-in-1 throw-off, so you can turn off the wires, tune the drum in real time, start a metronome, that sort of stuff. The kick drum has a larger playing surface, just like on the flagship kits, so they're unifying that sort of pad design across the lineup. One of the crashes has been changed to the Roland CY14 RT, and because the module is bigger and heavier than the old TD27, which was a shockingly lightweight module, they moved away from mounting the module to the hi-hat stand on a clamp, and they now have it on a dedicated stand, just like on the VAD 316. And if you compare this kit to the TD 516, you're getting larger crashes, 2 of the toms are larger, the kick drum is bigger, and the snare drum is newer. Plus, you get individual stands instead of a drum rack if you like that sort of thing. So what are my overall thoughts on this version of the kit? Not shockingly, it's my favorite of the bunch because I like having an acoustic-looking kit. I'm a tall person, so smaller electronic drums don't really fit with my body type, and you get a physical presence, when you have a larger-looking electronic drum set. You also get the fantastic module, you get the newest snare drum, all the pads here are great, you get the largest crash cymbals of all the kits that we've talked about. This is a solid package. Now, to be fair, the TD516 is technically a better value, and the VAD 716 is technically better if you have the money to go all the way up there. But the VAD 516 strikes a nice balance. You're getting 90% of the things the flagship gives you for less money. Okay, so now that I've covered the 6 new drum sets, let's talk about some of the stuff that stood out to me about them. First, there is no successor to the Roland VAD 103 or 504. They just straight up haven't announced any new drum sets that will fill those slots. After looking into this, it appears that those particular drum sets did not sell amazingly well, so maybe, just maybe, Roland is cutting their losses and saying, maybe we just don't need a kit in those slots. The second thing is, they really did not nerf the V31 or the V51. They made them more powerful than I feel like we expected, especially the V31, because I think that drum module is going to be selling for roughly $1,000 when they start selling that. By the way, they won't sell the individual new components until early next year, around January. That's what they're saying right now. So if you want to buy just the module, you're going to have to wait a little bit. But you'll notice they didn't make them like very, limited in most ways that you would expect. I've got 2 theories as to why they were so, let's just say, generous with these new modules. Theory number 1 is that Roland really wants everybody to sign up for the Roland Cloud. This is their way they can get us into a subscription model, or at the very least, buy individual kits, microtransactions. And I'm fine with microtransactions. If I want to spend some extra money because I really liked a DW kit on the Roland Cloud, there's nothing wrong with doing that. And also, you get 6 months access to everything because they give you like a trial, to the Roland Cloud. So they want everybody to sign up to the Roland Cloud. And if the lower end modules were underpowered, if they had weak CPUs and didn't have a lot of storage space and this and that and the other, they would have had to make dumbed down versions of all the Roland Cloud kits. But by bringing up the power level of the cheaper drum modules, they unify all those modules. Now, the Roland Cloud, which they want everybody to sign up for, those kits can work on all of them without having to make multiple versions for different kinds of modules. So that's theory number 1. Theory number 2, though, might be a little bit more accurate. Who knows? You'll notice that the whole drum industry is kind of moving towards unifying the sound engines of the mid-range modules and the flagship modules. Take a look at Alesis. Earlier this year, they came out with a module called the Alesis Strata Core. And that is basically the Alesis Strata Prime with a few compromises. They took the majority of what made the Prime cool and put it in a smaller form factor with less ports. It's not exactly the same. It doesn't have quite all the samples, but it's close enough. So Alesis is doing it. I also saw Yamaha do it a few years ago. The DTX Pro X and the DTX Pro, they're pretty much the same thing. They have like the same sounds, and I think most of the sound editing. There are differences, like the sound quality is ever so slightly better on the Pro X, but again, they're kind of unifying the sound engine as far as I can tell, and has most of the capabilities. The differences come from the ports and the interface. You also can say, two box, the Drum at 3 and the Drum at 5 Mark II are very, very similar to each other. And I'm expecting that whenever F-Note refreshes their mid-range modules, they'll probably take a lot of the F-Note Pro module and then have less ports. But that's just me guessing. So you could say, well, maybe Roland was feeling the change in the wind and they're just sort of deciding to go all in and nip the competition in the bud because they have such a strong flagship module. The V71 is fantastic. By taking what makes that fantastic and putting it in the cheaper modules, it gives them a really big advantage. So again, those are just two theories. I don't really know from the inside why Roland did it, but those are two ideas that I have. All right, so before we move ahead to the Alesis news, summing up my overall thoughts on this Roland lineup, Roland made a really strong line of drums here. It'll put some pressure on the competition. So now Alesis and Yamaha and F-Note especially, because eventually they're going to have to reboot the drums that are going to compete against these. They're going to really have to bring the heat if they want to compete because these drum sets are really, really good. So I'm hoping that with competition in the industry, everyone gets better. All right, so now let's move ahead to some Alesis news. They have a new drum set called the Alesis Nitro Ultimate. Now, in case you're kind of lost, there's a ton of Nitros. Let me just line them all up. The cheapest one is the Nitro Max, which I reviewed a little while back. It's $400. Then you get the Nitro Max Expanded, which is $500. I believe this is a Guitar Center exclusive. Then the next one up is the Nitro Pro for $700. Then the Nitro Pro XL, which is basically expanded, for $900. I believe this is a Guitar Center exclusive. And then finally, the new one is the Nitro Ultimate for $900. As you can tell, they're both the same price. So what are you doing here? It's basically a trade. You can either get the kit that has the hi-hat mounted on the drum rack, but you get a fourth tom, or you can get a hi-hat mounted on a hi-hat stand and you just give up the fourth tom. That's a pretty good trade, in my opinion, because I like the realism of a movable hi-hat more. And Alesis made a good move here. I haven't played this drum set, but what I can tell you is that now they're the only mainline company, in the US at least, that sells a movable hi-hat on a drum set under $1,000. Previously, you could buy stuff like that, but it would be on Amazon. It would be from a company you had no hope in actually trying out in a store before you bought it. Now a regular mainline company like Alesis sells something like this at your local Guitar Center, or I think Edrum Center is also going to sell this. You can buy from Sweetwater, whoever your store of choice is. So it's an important move, not because it's never been done before, but because a mainline company is doing it. And the really interesting thing is, I don't even know if this is going to be that much more expensive for Alesis to make, because you got to remember, previously they also had to make and ship you a hi-hat pedal that had some metal in the design. So it was bulky and it was a little bit heavier. Now they're getting rid of a big hi-hat pedal and they're giving you a very small plastic controller instead. The hi-hat stand doesn't come with the drum set. You have to buy that separate. So I don't know what the math is, but it is possible that Alesis is even making a drum set for less money and giving you a better drum set overall at the same time. So they're winning and the customer wins because you want a movable hi-hat. Now, because this is a news video and I haven't played this drum set, I can't tell you what the performance of that hi-hat is like. I can't tell you if this drum set is a good buy or not because of that. But I do find this kit interesting, and I hope more companies start selling a movable hi-hat under $1,000. All right, so that covers the Edrum news. Check out my reviews for the TD316 and the TD516. They'll be linked below if they're live, and you can just subscribe to see them when they come out too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.